Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to the first installment in my 2022 Holiday Gift Guide series. Today we are going to be focusing on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and the major releases that we've seen this year for D&D 5e. So let's just sort of get right into it here. I'm not going to do this necessarily in chronological order, just sort of based off of, I guess, what I consider to be the best way to start and the best way to close out the video. So, as always, when it comes to these holiday gift guides, I know there's lots of folks out there that have family members or friends that they are either trying to get into tabletop role-playing games or that have expressed an interest in tabletop RPGs, and they're just trying to look out or figure out where the best place to start is. And I think a good way to start is with, pun intended, a starter set. So this year we did see the release of a brand new starter set, the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. This is an updated starter set, so this is meant to sort of replace the Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set from back in 2014. So it's a very similar product. It does have the rulebook, the adventure, the set of 6 dice, yeah, so we have the pre-made, pre-generated characters. And what's interesting about the characters is some of them are kind of like your traditional archetypes that we've seen in previous sets. We do have things like the Dwarven Cleric, we have the Halfling Rogue, we have the Elf Wizard. However, we have, for the fighter types, for the martial characters, we have, in the previous starter set, we had just 2 different fighters. I think they were even both like fighter champions. And the only really difference between them was one was focused on ranged and one was focused on melee. And here we have an elven fighter that you can play as one of the pre-generated characters. The elven fighter is a ranged-based character, so they favor dexterity and lighter armor for mobility. And then instead of just the regular fighter for the set for the last character, they actually went with the paladin class, which is kind of cool to see. Each of the characters also has their own unique background and reason for visiting this monastery that you can find on the Stormwreck Isle itself. It could be something as simple as like the paladin is kind of disillusioned with the corruption that he has seen in the city that he came from, and went on a spiritual retreat to this particular location, hoping to sort of rekindle, his feelings towards the church, and trying not to focus too much on how bad it was in the one particular branch that he was a part of. The rogue character is a prospective member of a thieves guild and is trying to track down another former member of the same guild that has been accused of leaving the guild and stealing quite a bit of the guild's treasury when they left. You have the wizard looking for the mage tower that is found on the island, believing it to house some strange arcane magic that they're looking to master. And yeah, they actually did a pretty decent job of integrating the characters into the adventure itself and giving them different reasons for wanting to go to the different locations on the island itself. So there are 3 major locations. We have the Mage Tower, which is sort of the finale of the adventure itself. You have this Myconid network of caves where the Myconids were once friendly with the colony on the island. However, they had suddenly sort of cut them out and refused to have any dealings with them. So the players, one of the things that they're asked to do is find out what's happened there. And there is an abundance of zombies sort of coming from various shipwrecks that sort of dot the coastline. And there's a particular shipwreck that seems to be at the center of these like undead creatures. And one of the things I actually think that they did really well with this adventure is the first 2 locations, the Myconid Cave and the shipwreck. You can visit those in any order. They're designed for either first or second level parties. And then the Mage Tower is sort of, again, that's meant to be the finale of the adventure, so it's a little bit tougher. That's meant for the 3rd level characters. But if the first 2 locations, They're written as if they are, the first place that the party's going to go to. So the encounters are designed for first level characters. However, each of the combat encounters that are in those areas have guidelines for scaling them for a second level party if it's the second location that the group goes to. And it's just one of those things that I don't think a lot of people necessarily think of when it comes to trying to learn a role-playing game. But I think a really important thing to be able to do is to improvise or be able to alter things as needed based off of the party's power level or like the encounters that they originally had planned, and just being able to modify them and having some examples of how to, have an encounter that's designed primarily for a first level party, but, this is what you do to modify it for a second level party. It's just something that, even though it's not necessarily stated in the rule book, like this is what you should do, it still gives you some examples that you can have in the back of your mind as you're learning the game. So it's an aspect that I actually really appreciate, and maybe I'm making a bigger deal of it than it really needs to be, but it's just something that I thought was kind of a cool inclusion. And the adventure itself, it's shorter than the Lost Mine of Phandelver scenario, but I do believe that it is actually better focused and better streamlined to kind of keep the players engaged with the story and going from location A to location B and then finally location C. So a really solid starter set for 5th edition D&D, and this does retail for $19.99 US dollars or $25.99 Canadian. So we have our starter set, but let's just say once we've gotten past the starter set, or for those that have been a little bit more comfortable with the game, they've been playing it for a little bit, what's one of the things that they might be missing or might look forward to as a gift this year? Well, back in January, we actually had the D&D 5th edition rules expansion gift set come out, and this actually includes the 3 books. It has Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which we see here. So Xanathar's Guide has new subclass options for all of the player's handbook classes, as well as some other things. I think there's like making traps and some other things for DMs to be able to consider as well. But this was a really, really fantastic book that I know a lot of people that were really into this one when it first came out. So this is a great addition to your collection if you don't already have it. We've got Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which is sort of similar to Xanathar's Guide with new subclasses for the player's handbook classes. It also has the new rule set that going forward Wizards of the Coast has been using for brand new player character races. So instead of the races having set attribute bonuses like +2 to con and +1 to wisdom kind of idea, or +2 to dex, +1 to intelligence, things along those lines, they give you the option now to kind of set the bonuses where you want to put them. So you can either have a +2 bonus that you put into one attribute and then a +1 bonus you can put into another attribute, or it gives you 3 +1 bonuses that you can put into any 3 individual ability scores. It's like I said, it's something that, it's up to you if that's the way that you want to do things or not, or how you feel about that. I don't necessarily mind it. I kind of wish, though, that they still had the set attributes, so you sort of knew what the race kind of leaned towards. But I also get that, in this day and age, people do like the ability to customize their characters a bit more. So it's, it's the new system that they use, but this is the book that it was introduced in. And then we have Monsters of the Multiverse, which actually uses the new player character race information, or the way that they handle attributes and other abilities factored into it. For a few months, the only way to get this book was through the gift set. However, it has since been made available at your local game store or your major book retailers. And this is, again, a pretty cool book. It combines creatures and races from Volo's Guide to Monsters, as well as Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and just sort of presents them in the newer way of doing things. So, for example, spellcasting enemies instead of just having like the same kind of spell slot system that player characters have now, they typically have utilitarian spells that can be used either at will or a certain number of times per day. Some might be usable 3 times per day, some might be only usable once per day. And some of their more prominent attack spells or damage dealing spells have actually been converted into just attack abilities that no longer do like the saving throw thing, but they just make attack rolls like an attack with a weapon or a bow, like a sword or a bow, or things along those lines. So it's sort of a different way of doing things. And I got to be honest, when it comes to the spell casting enemies, I actually kind of like the way that it's being done now a little bit better. I kind of like the idea of just, enemies, creatures, monsters having unique abilities. Something that sets them apart from player characters. They're not just simply a player character, but worse, like they have been in some previous editions. I like the idea that they actually have a little bit more unique stuff kind of working for them. And as somebody who has gone to local game stores for Adventurers League or other things in the past, having it so that spellcasters aren't completely rendered useless because everybody multi-classed enough levels of rogue to get evasion. I can understand why they've made that change. But yeah, really solid book, large collection of playable races, as well as different monsters to throw at your group there. So really great book. And we also have just a Dungeon Master screen that's included in here as well. I've done an unboxing and already shown the screen off in full, but I do love the artwork on the outside of the screen. The inside of the screen is your standard D&D 5e screen, like the Dungeon Master screen reincarnated, so it's pretty much got all the same information that's on there. But yeah, pretty good offering overall. Unfortunately, I don't have the price for this off the top of my head, so if I can find it, I will try to include it in the video's description. But yeah, this is a great set, and one of the things that I've also seen people do is if they have a group where different members of the group are looking for a specific book from the set, like one player might not have Xanathar's Guide, one player might be interested in the Monsters of the Multiverse. I've seen groups sort of go in and split the cost and then take the book that they wanted out of it, and the other person who threw in an extra couple of dollars or whatever, maybe gets like the DM screen or the slipcase, and it comes in a slipcase, so I kind of love it for that perspective alone, because there are 2 things that I am an absolute sucker for, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. One is a box set, and the other is a slipcase. So I think I've talked about slipcases in the past, so I'm not going to rehash that story, but yeah, I've got sort of a special attachment to slipcases. And speaking of slipcases, we're going to go right into the next one here. And this is the Spelljammer Adventures in Space set. So this is an adventure first and foremost, but it's also meant to just introduce the Spelljammers into your campaign with rules and how to sort of operate or navigate between different campaign worlds using the Spelljammers. It comes with a Dungeon Master screen as well, and the artwork on the screen is absolutely fantastic. It might be one of my favorite screens overall. It's just got this really, again, just sort of a sense of awe to it. The aquatic sort of creatures in the astral sea concept is really cool. And the set itself is broken into 3 different books. We've got Boo's Astral Menagerie, which is essentially your monster manual. You have The Light of whatever that is. I'm not going to try to pronounce it here, but this is your adventure, your scenario, which actually begins with whatever world the players begin on, or that they're native to. Having these large, like, crystalline vines start erupting all throughout the planet, and the crystal vines are slowly draining the life force from the world itself. So the characters are forced to flee the world on a Spelljammer and eventually try to find the cause of these crystal vines that are slowly destroying their worlds and how to put a stop to them. And then we've got our Astral Adventurer's Guide, which has a couple of different player character options, as well as, like I said, the Spelljammer specific information, like how air pockets work around the ships, as well as like the gravity planes and stuff like that. And I actually really like the way that gravity works with the Spelljammers, kind of having this gravitational plane that's sort of around midship that if you fall past it, then you sort of come like you would land on like the bottom of the Spelljammer. It just opens up some interesting options for, like three-dimensional combat kind of thing. So overall, I think it's a pretty decent set, and I have to say, like, I like the idea of releasing adventures that are also meant to introduce campaign settings or campaign world concepts as a slipcase, because again, I freely admit that I am a sucker for a slipcase. So there you go, we've got Spelljammer Adventures in Space. Now, we also have a few different campaign books that have come out this year. So we're actually going to start with the first one that came out. I think this came out back in March. I think it was March. And we've got the Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep. So yeah, this is, of the two Critical Role products that have come out so far for 5e, I like this one a lot more than the campaign setting, and that's just personal preference. But this is a pretty interesting adventure. You have sort of the trope of like the chosen ones, answering the call to try to free this legendary hero from their prison kind of idea. But what's interesting is that there's the potential, although I don't recommend it, there is the potential that the player characters don't end up being those chosen ones. And it's, like I said, it's not what I would recommend going with, but I like the idea that they've actually sort of planned for the group maybe not succeeding at what they originally set out to do. There is a rival party that also is used quite frequently throughout the scenario. However, they don't necessarily have to be hostile with one another. They're just simply two adventuring parties, and the way that they interact at the beginning, like the campaign begins with the sort of festival going on where the players can sort of interact with these different events or games that they can do, and the way that they carry themselves, the way that they treat others, can go a long way to forming what the rival group of adventurers, sort of how they regard the players. And it's just, there's an interesting sequence of like consequences and choices, and it actually focuses more on the different possibilities in this book than a lot of other campaigns that have come out for like D&D 5e, or even just other role-playing games in general. And one of the things I was really impressed with was just the level of like contingencies built into the book itself. And yeah, I think it's, again, a pretty solid adventure overall, and it is one that I definitely recommend. Now, we also saw this year, prior to the Spelljammer Adventures in Space set, we also did see the Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, and this is a compilation anthology collection. However, what I like about this is that the collection of mini adventures are all new. They're all brand new, unique to 5th edition. And don't get me wrong, I loved books like Tales from the Yawning Portal, even though the name I didn't think was quite as good, because none of it, or hardly any of it, takes place in the Forgotten Realms. But the actual contents of the book were great, and Ghost of Saltmarsh is one of my favorite 5e adventure books, period. But those were reprints of older edition modules, which is fine. I think it is great to have the ability for new players to be able to experience some of those classic adventures and modules. But now that we've had some of those, I love the fact that we've had a few compilation books, anthology collection of adventures that are meant to be like new and unique experiences. Another thing that I do like about this book as well is the scenarios included. I think there's 17 of them in total, and they are all meant to be like kind of one shot or like 1 or 2 sessions kind of tops. And one of the things that they did, the reason that they did that, is they wanted the book to be a bit more streamer friendly, because there are groups out there that do like to live stream their gameplay sessions either on Twitch or YouTube or what have you. and trying to design something that is easy for those groups to be able to just pick up and play, run a scenario or two, and then move on to something else. I like the way that they sort of handled that. Each of the adventures also includes a little gazetteer section for the region that the adventure took place in. So it also gives you some campaign setting areas that you can use, cities, settlements, countrysides, stuff like that you can just pick up and drop into your existing campaign setting. The Citadel itself also has a few interesting things that are kind of dangled before you as the DM to maybe make your own storylines or adventures out of in the future, like the fact that there's this large crystal that's kind of like skewered through the different sections of land that make up this floating citadel out in the middle of like its own kind of almost like a demi-plane that it's contained within. But the crystal on occasion will actually change color and hue, and the reason for that has not actually been defined. There are theories that the book brings forward, but there's no actual concrete reason for it, and that's something that you could incorporate into your game. The colors could start to change with more frequency, which could actually spell some sort of catastrophic event coming. They could be, as the book sort of suggests, or as one of the theories that scholars have come up with, is that the crystal changes color when a new civilization is born, and then when a civilization dies, that color fades away, kind of thing. But it's a cool idea. There's also this like maelstrom storm that surrounds the citadel as well, and it can kind of grow in intensity, or it can kind of fade in intensity, and nobody knows what happens to individuals that get lost within the storm. And again, it's just something that could be fodder for your own unique scenarios. So yeah, a really cool product overall. And I love these anthologies. I hope to see more of these over the next year or so. All right, so then we have the newest book to come out for 5th edition D&D, and the reason I held off on doing this video, we also have at the time I'm recording this, actually, it's yet to actually hit store shelves, but it will be coming out. I think December 6th is the official release date. I believe you can pre-purchase it, or you can have early access to it on D&D Beyond, if I recall correctly. But we have Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen. So here we have the two different covers. I decided not to bother with alternate covers for some of the other products that I've shown, like the Radiant Citadel book or the Spelljammer set, just because those have been around long enough that the game store exclusive covers may not be easy to come by. So I think just the standard version of the release that can be purchased at any local game store or major book retailer was the way to go with those. But with this being the newest release to come out, and actually not officially on store shelves at the time this video goes live, I just wanted to show both versions of the cover here, because the game store exclusive cover has to be my favorite 5e alternate cover art that we've had so far. Death Knights, I have one of my favorite undead creatures, and we've got like Lord Soth on the cover here. This is a campaign first and foremost, so it's not actually a campaign setting, which is what I thought it was going to be, but this is actually a campaign that gives you enough information to be able to run it, but it doesn't go into great detail on the greater world as a whole. That's something that could hopefully be expanded upon in future products. And I know one of the things that has been happening with 5th edition over the last few years is because DM's Guild exists and it has a lot of like user-generated content. I know that they've left some stuff undefined so that people can sort of fill in the blanks themselves on DM's Guild. I don't know how I feel about that personally, but from a business perspective, I can see the logic in it. But yeah, this is actually shaping up to be a pretty decent adventure. I haven't had a chance to read it too far yet. I've just sort of skimmed through it. But one of the things that I do like is the way that they've incorporated Lord Soth as this, super high-level villain that is far beyond what the party should be capable of. However, he doesn't necessarily pull punches like previous high-level enemies have done in things like Waterdeep Dragon Heist. In fact, the main confrontation that the players can have with them involves a means of kind of distracting the Death Knight by showing him images of his past so that he can be sort of hypnotized by that enough for the players to accomplish what it is that they were trying to do and then get the hell out of there, sort of thing. But I'm really digging this so far. Dragonlance was the first ever campaign setting book that I owned, so I'm happy to see it get some love in the modern D&D 5th edition era. I will be having my full review video of the adventure come out around the time that the book releases, either available on the 6th or within a couple of days of the release, one way or the other. But yeah, Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen, looks really cool so far. And that leaves us with one last Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen product. I have done an unboxing video of this already, so I'm not going to pull the contents out here, but I will include the link to that video in the description so that you can check it out yourself. But we have the Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen Deluxe Edition. And so what this is it has the campaign itself. So it has the book, and the book actually has an alternate third cover that's only found within this deluxe collection set. So depending on which artwork you like the artwork from the front of the box is what's on the cover of the book. So again, I don't want to take everything out here in this video just because it's kind of a pain to get everything back in the box. But yeah, we've got, so if you prefer this cover to this one or to this one here, then the only way to get it at this point in time, at least, is inside of the Deluxe Edition box set. But you also have a Dungeon Master screen, which has some really cool, like, battlefield artwork showing, like, the Dragon Queen's armies. And I love the DM screens from the Spelljammer set and the Rules expansion gift set. The artwork on the outside is absolutely fantastic. The contents of the screen on the inside are kind of generic, unfortunately. There is some, like, encounter table stuff that is on there for the actual campaign that's included in the book. But there still gives you, like, the conditions and stuff like that. So I've got too many screens with conditions on it as it is at this point. But I will freely admit that, again, for people that don't own the DM screens, or, if this is going to be their first one, it's good information to have. Like, don't get me wrong. And if it's your first screen, then it's awesome. But I think I have like 6 5th edition screens that have a large portion taken up with conditions. But that said, the fact that the screen's in there is still really cool. It also comes with the Warriors of Krynn board game. And one of the things, so this is sort of like your mass battle, like cooperative, story-based board game. And one of the things that is actually really cool about the Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen campaign is that it actually allows you and your group, for some of, like, the larger scale battles that take place kind of at the same time that the campaign is going on. If you have the board game and the book, you have the option of running specific scenarios that the book will sort of direct you to. The campaign book will direct you to a specific scenario, and you can play out that scenario with your group, and the way that the scenario ends or the results of it can influence elements of the campaign going forward. It's a really cool way of incorporating a simultaneously released board game with the campaign of the same name. Like, I kind of wish that they would have done stuff like that with the Storm King's Thunder, which I do have the board game that came out around the same time as that, or things like going back and incorporating Castle Ravenloft into Curse of Strahd, like stuff like that. I think would have been kind of cool for them to have done, and the fact that they're actually doing that with the newest book, I think is really, really cool. Now, that said, it is 100% completely and totally optional. You don't need to have the board game to actually be able to run the campaign or get the most out of the campaign, but I do love the fact that they actually allow you to incorporate those two products into an overarching story. And again, it's one of the things that I hope to see more of. And I will have my review and sort of the rules description and sort of like the how to play video for Warriors of Krynn, and that should be available again closer to December 6th, maybe within, again, a couple of days of the release date. So keep an eye out for that video. It will be coming out very, very soon. But yeah, really, really cool set overall. And the only thing that I don't like about it is the fact that it doesn't have, it's not like a box with like the tabs, or that the thing kind of slides off. You actually do have to kind of pull this rip tab to access the contents inside, which pains me as a collector, but it is what it is, and not everybody's going to be as obsessive about just this outer packaging as I am, and I totally get that. But that's my only real gripe with it. Otherwise, I think that this is just a really cool option for people to have, especially if you like premium collection stuff, or if you want to have, you know, the campaign and the board game and all the stuff that sort of goes along with it. So anyway, that was sort of my look at the new releases for 2022 for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. This is the first in a series of holiday gift guide videos, so there will be some more stuff that I will be releasing over the next few days, including some third-party stuff or just some other RPGs as well. So if you're interested, be sure to check those out. But for now, these books, these products, I think are going to be some great ways for you and your group or prospective new groups to be able to spend just a little bit of time together and just have some great experiences, rolling dice and telling stories. So thank you all very much for watching. Thank you to Wizards of the Coast who sent these products to me over the course of the last year to do review videos on. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.